Okay, I thought I would just show real quickly. I talked about using that degree tool on the other head, and I guess it worked, but it was kind of a pain, and I don't know, didn't really trust it that much on how accurate it is, but could be just user error. Anyways, before that, this is how I've always done it, is after I do my first 22 foot-pounds of torque on all my head bolts, I just go and draw a line in the middle of all the bolts. So then the first one is 90 degrees, so that line will be facing that way. And then the next one is another 90, so basically when all these bolts are torqued proper, this line will be facing directly downward, except for that bolt. And that bolt, they only turn 50 degrees. So anyways, I thought I would just show you that's how I've always done it, but it's probably even a better way, or I'm sure there's a lot nicer tool out there that'll do it a lot better than this, but this is how I've always done it, and I've never had any issues. So when they're all torqued down, excluding that one and that one, all the lines should be basically pointing straight down. These ones here are going to be kind of in the corner because they're only a 50-degree turn, and then all these are just 22 foot-pounds. So we got both heads on. She's coming together. Alright, we got our new thresh plate. So basically I'll just put some Molly startup lube kind of on the part of the cam that's going to ride against the plate here. And then I sent you 4 new bolts with Loctite stuff on them already. Torque those in, put that on, get the timing chain on, and we'll get the front of the motor all buttoned up. Well, I got a little ahead of myself putting the timing chain on. If you're going to do that, be sure not to have your rocker arms tight, or it's just going to be next to impossible. It's probably going to be super hard to see, but on the bottom of that timing gear is that little dot right on the top there. Of course, you want to match that with your dot on the bigger gear. Even though the camera makes it look like they're kind of crooked, they're straight up and down with each other. So be sure to Loctite your cam bolts. I just used the blue stuff, nothing too crazy, but you don't want one of those guys backing out, that's for sure. Alright, well, just gotta get the gasket. Supposed to be able to get one of those tomorrow, so we'll get a gasket tomorrow and get the timing cover and harmonic balancer put back on, and I'm going to see if they got a rear main seal and some other stuff. I might as well try to replace that while I got the motor out. But yeah, this engine's getting pretty close being plopped right back in the car, so we'll keep at it. Alright, well, we're coming to a close on getting these cylinder heads reinstalled. I got the passenger head all put together with rocker arms and etc. Anyways, just put a little bit of startup grease, nothing crazy on the end of your push rods, or I usually do. And then I always kind of just clean all the oil off the rocker arm surfaces. Make sure your valve cover surface is nice and clean. There's one thing I can say about these LS motors is I haven't ever really ran into a valve cover gasket leaking problem, but maybe I'm lucky. And then same thing, I just put just a little bit on top of these, nothing crazy. We're not building a you know, freshly rebuilt, honed, ready to go, got to break itself in engine. But just a little bit on top there until it makes oil pressure. Then you'll put on your rocker arm assembly, put on the valve cover, and this side is done also. Very exciting. Okay, so when I put the harmonic balancer on in the past, you know, you'll read, some people say you have to center up these covers by shimming them and making sure they're absolutely perfect and centered just simply because there's no dowels and these holes that go around these 10mm bolts. You know, you can move this cover around. So if you just tighten your timing cover on and then put this in, it may not be centered and that could cause a premature leak in your timing cover seal. So what I have always done is I just put this cover on lightly and just, you know, I don't tighten these bolts, they're just barely on there, touching the timing cover so it can wiggle around. Then I start putting my harmonic balancer on, and I've never had a leak on the front timing seal, but you know, I get my harmonic balancer on and tight, and then I tighten all my timing cover bolts to the torque spec, which I think is like 10 foot-pounds maybe a little more, and then I do my ones that go in the bottom to the oil pan last. So, and then putting this harmonic balancer on, they make a tool. It's always been pretty easy for me just to take this old socket that I beat stuff with, and I don't even have to hit it very hard, and I just do really fast, quick swings with my small 2-pound hammer, wherever that went, and I just tap it on there pretty slow, and you know, I get it going into the seal-aways, and then you can put your crank bolt in there and tighten it up the rest of the way, or you can continue hitting it with this. I was careful to line up my dowel pin, so it looks like it's lined up and going in, but a lot of people have trouble putting these back on, and you know, people want to hit the outside of this with the hammer or something, and you know, you got this rubber thing inside here, and you can break these, chip these, and all kinds of stuff. If you're going to hit it, I would say get a socket that as big as the center here and hit it right in the center, and then you don't want to swing real super hard and hit it hard, because you don't want to put a bunch of stress on your crankshaft, you know, by beating it on there. So anyways, that's how I've always put them on there, but I'm going to get that finished putting on there and getting this all tight before my glue I had to put on the bottom starts drying up, and I put a little bit on the sides just because. Alright, so real quick, I thought we'd talk about the steam vents on the cylinder heads here. Actually just goes this way. Something like that probably needs to be straightened out. But a lot of these have 4-corner steam vents, so like a line that runs down the middle and connects to the front here. Some of the engines, later engines and whatnot, they have these caps on the back, which I don't have any of those caps. I had some that I just really hastily put together when I was putting the supercharger on, and they were really sorry looking, but so I decided to go ahead and just build a cup, something better anyway. So I just cut the tube off and just filled that thing up with weld, and then I'll stick them on there, and he'll be the cap for the back corners, because you can't run a pipe underneath the supercharger all the way over. In fact, the supercharger sends you this one in its kit here. It's a short feed tube and all that stuff. But That's kind of what I had on there before. I just crushed the ends and kind of welded them, just really fast, haste type of job on them. But I'm gonna cut that tube off, fill it up with weld, clean it up, and that should be satisfactory. Alright, well, getting pretty close to getting this back in. I'm just waiting on the parts store to bring me my rear main seal and stuff, and I'm fortunate enough they will actually deliver that stuff to me. So get that in, we'll change out the rear main seal and gasket on the rear of the motor. I don't think they're leaking, but you know, I don't want to pull this motor back out because it is. Got my steam caps on there. They're not the prettiest, but they're a lot better than what they were. I put my knock sensor wires back in. I don't really know if I need them, but you know, they go under the supercharger, pain in the butt. I talked about in another couple of videos back about on the supercharger, you're not supposed to use the stock bolts, and that's mainly because they stick up pretty high, like 3/8 of an inch. So I found these Allen kind of carriage style looking bolts, and they only stick up about 1/8. So I had the factory bolts in there and they never did touch the supercharger, but it's really close. So this will ensure that they never can touch. And I got these 2 corner ones loose because that's where I'll hook my chain to pull this out. Put the front steam pipe on because it is a real bear cat if you don't put it on before you put the supercharger on, and that's what I did the first time, and I don't want to go through that again. Also, I mentioned when I pulled this motor out that I would get antifreeze right in here, and I thought maybe my head gasket was bad. Well, upon further inspection, it was the clamp on this, because like I said, I put all this on after the supercharger and it was just really hard. Well, I was looking at this metal nipple sticking out here and I could actually see where dried up orange antifreeze was on it. So I put a, you know, pretty much a high pressure fuel clamp on there because I can get to it all right now. And I got that clamped down, and this is the steam vent tube that goes into my adapter on the radiator. So I do believe that's where my antifreeze was leaking from. It was probably just coming off here and running down and pulling up on this stuff right here. So that was probably what the leak was. So like I said, this stuff I'm just doing because it's really hard to do this stuff after the fact. So cleaned up my head surfaces, got all these kind of cleaned out for a good seal. So there's not a whole lot left. Got the harmonic balancer all on this. You are supposed to put a new bolt in every time you change it. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've used the same bolt like 3 times and it's never broke or loosened up or anything. I do put a drop, just 1 drop of Loctite on it. I don't go crazy at all with the seal thread locker on it, but I have used the same bolt. I do now have a bolt I use specifically to suck the harmonic balancer onto the crankshaft. You know, the last little bit that you need to move the harmonic balancer in. I do have this bolt that I've been using for that. But as far as the bolt I use just to do my torque and get it on there, I've been using the same bolt. And yeah, there's a good chance it could break or come loose or something. It hasn't done it to me yet, so I guess I do probably strongly recommend you going and getting a new one. They're not very expensive, they're like $8, but every time I go look for one, nobody has one in stock, so I just kind of get lazy and don't ever replace it. But it's a really high torque. It's like 160 foot-pounds or 130 or something. And I think my torque wrench only goes up to 110, so I always torque it about 110 and then get my breaker bar on there and just give it just a little bit more. I've never had one come loose or anything, so That's about the best I can tell you on that. I've been told they can come loose and things can start flying apart, but lucky for me, it's never happened. So, but yeah, not too much more. I'm not going to put the dipstick in because that's all got to go around the headers and everything. Obviously can't put the starter in because got to do torque converter bolts. Yeah, that's really about as far as I can take this motor on building it before I put it in the car. So somebody did ask me on Instagram, they guess they saw that I have not taken the header gaskets off, and they're both glued on the side of the head, and you know, I've been using these same gaskets for quite a while now. They don't leak. I've never had a leaking problem with them, and you know, they're not damaged or scratched, and I was careful not to do anything weird to them or scratch them or dent them or anything, so I'm just going to use them again. That's why I left them on the heads. There's no point in changing everything out and spending a whole bunch of money if you can just reutilize it. So, so I'm just going to reuse them again, and you know, they should be fine. If they leak, then I got another set I can change them out, and they're pretty easy to change out, nothing difficult. So, like I said, the engine bay, I thought about washing it and cleaning it up and stuff, but you know, it's just going to get grimy and dirty again. And as I've already mentioned a couple of times, I'm still looking at some properties, and if I could get a shop and a good property where I knew I was going to be for a long time, and I'm actually buying it and I've got the space, and it'd be really nice to just take everything out and actually paint the engine compartment right, because it really needs it. But unfortunately, not at this time. I'm not going to open up that can of worms. But I posted a couple pictures on Instagram. So I utilized this off of the 5.3 wiring harness I have. It's just a connector that I cut out of the cab. So it's not going to ever be, it's not anything to be used. But there's kind of a cobble of wires in here that were just kind of hanging out and had no use, and they were just old wiring harness stuff that's not going to be utilized anymore. So I trimmed all those back, got rid of them, taped them up, whatever. And then these wires here, you know, I had to actually cut them all to get my wiring harness out because I didn't have a connector for them, but they're like, you know, my TCC lockup, my OBD2 scanner, fuel pump wire, stuff like that. And these are all just wires controlling things that I need inside the car. One's tachometer, you know, one's fuel pump switch, you know, one's a fan switch, etc., etc. So now I have a mass connector, so if I ever pull the wiring harness again, I can actually just pull the wiring harness without cutting a single wire. So this red wire here, I do have a nice connector, a big thick connector for just it to hook it up, so it'll be hooked back up, and you know, to make life easier on that. So I'm going to clean up some of the wiring as I go. That is one thing I will do, because a lot of this wiring I just cobbled together to get the project going, and I was never really all that happy with it. So I will get some of this other wiring buttoned up and put connectors on it so I can get it out quick release style. And I'm probably going to address my fuel lines, because I just put that braided stuff you can buy from the parts store over it, but the fuel lines are really too long, and I actually had some made up steel lines that I should probably put in before I stick the motor in and get my fuel lines cleaned up and get everything looking a little bit more tidy in the back there. So probably do that too. But yeah, other than that, the only other thing I saw that's kind of an issue that I probably should do is that seal right there where the steering column goes into the power steering box is actually leaking. And you know, I'm not going to take a chance in rebuilding a power steering box, so I guess I'm gonna see if I can't get, and that should be pretty easy. I mean, it's just I think a regular GM style. I'm sure it's pretty universal, so I'm gonna see if I can't get a new power steering box maybe for it, and that's about the worst of things I've seen. All that old crud over there and stuff happening. My master brake cylinder did go out early this year, so he was leaking on everything, and that's what caused all that grossness over there. So doesn't leak anymore. I might degrease that real quick before I put the motor in, but so hopefully tomorrow, today's Saturday, hopefully tomorrow I can get this engine stat back in there and get the supercharger mounted back on. And like I said, I'll actually do all the wiring after the supercharger. That way I can run my wiring a little bit different. And yeah, if I can get that stuff done, then we're on the downhill run of this project. I have to get a few air parts for the supercharger to open up the air. But other than that, not too much left to do, and it'll be pretty exciting to see what kind of horsepower that this motor is going to put out on the dyno. So I may show a quick video on the rear main seal, but if I don't, I assure you I am replacing it. That's why I'm kind of stalling out and just waiting. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching.